Hey, all you high-flying cats and kitties out there in airplane land, we got a blast from the past for you.
Wouldn't it be great if there were an electronic aid to navigation that was as simple to operate as that old AM radio sitting on top of the fridge in the kitchen? And wouldn't it be even better if it could direct you to some places as easily as someone extending an arm and pointing in the desired direction? Well, such a beauty exists, although it does have a few warts. The airborne part of the system we're talking about is generally referred to as the Automatic Direction Finder, or ADF. But that's only part of the story. The ground-based portion of the system is a simple AM transmitter that uses frequencies from 190 to 1790 kilohertz. You probably recognize the frequencies from 540 to 1710, which cover the commercial AM broadcast band, where your favorite news, talk, or sports shows reside. The lower portion, below 535, is reserved for navigational aids called non-directional beacons, or NDBs. Non-directional, since they broadcast the same signal equally in all directions, just like the commercial broadcast stations. It's the ADF's job to figure out where the beacon or station is. Now, the directional properties of a loop antenna were known at the time of World War I and were widely used by the navies of that era. If you've ever looked at photos of 1930s airplanes, you may have noticed a loop about a foot or so in diameter mounted somewhere on the front of the airplane. You were looking at the ADF's ancestor, the manual direction finder. Your Skyhawk has all this electronically reduced to a modest little bump here on the belly of the aircraft, but the principle is the same. To help you use them, NDBs are shown on your charts like this. Notice that just like the VOR, the NDB station is listed with its Morse code identifier. For an NDB, that could be 1, 2, or 3 letters. In this case, GGK stands for Mayfield. Don't ask me. Selected AM broadcast stations are depicted like this, along with their call letters. Not every station is shown, only the more powerful ones, and the chart makers prefer to use those that operate all 24 hours. AM transmitters are simple, relatively cheap, and easy to maintain, and they still form part of the aerial navigation system in some areas of the world. Furthermore, they broadcast a signal that follows the Earth's contours. Unlike the line-of-sight VOR, with a powerful AM transmitter, you can often receive the signal on the opposite side of the mountain range. That's the good news. The bad news is that unless you have a reasonable idea of where you are, you might be misled into trying to fly through that mountain range. In addition, signals in this band are subject to all sorts of bending and distortion, particularly in bad weather when you need them the most. Some older ADFs will cheerfully direct you to the ionized core of a thunderstorm without even a hint of remorse. So let's look at the hardware in your Skyhawk that organizes all these things, both good and bad. Not surprisingly, you turn it on here with the switch labeled off volume. And just like the VOR and communication sets, you see the active and standby frequencies here and here. By the way, the standby frequency will be replaced with a timing function if you press the button labeled FLT-ET right here. That stands for flight time and elapsed time. You don't need that feature just yet, so you can restore the standby frequency display by pressing the frequency double arrow button here in the middle. Obviously then, the active standby frequencies are transferred the same way as they are on Navcom sets. Just press the button with the double-headed arrow and they're transferred. Again, like the Navcoms, the frequencies are set with the double knobs on the right. You pull the small knob out to set the ones. You push it in to set the tens, and the large knob sets the hundreds. Now, turn your attention to the 5 buttons across the bottom of the faceplate. For now, you'll only need 2 of them. You won't be using the 2 on the far right, except that if you can't see the standby frequency, you know that somebody pushed 1 or both of them. We've already talked about the center button, the frequency transfer switch. So let's skip to the far left end of the row where you'll find the ADF switch. The ADF actually has two antennas. In the case of your Skyhawk, two functions combined in one antenna. One is used for direction finding and the other for regular AM radio reception. When the direction finding antenna does its job, it's sometimes hard to hear the station identification signals. If you push the switch in to the antenna position, you'll get a much clearer signal to confirm your station identification. To avoid confusion, ADF or ANT appears just to the left of the active frequency on the panel, depending on the position of the switch. The other switch we need to discuss is somewhat mysteriously labeled BFO. That actually stands for not UFO, but Beat Frequency Oscillator. And some transmitters require the use of this feature in order to hear the identification. Transmitters in the United States do not. However, if you hear an obnoxious noise when you're trying to listen for the NDB ID and the automatic direction finder doesn't seem to find anything, let alone a direction, check the BFO switch. It probably got bumped in by mistake.
Well, so much for switches and controls, boys and girls. But our time is about up, so tune in tomorrow when the Fly Girls and Fly Boys will discover more of the secrets of the ancient ADF.